Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all to the fourth meeting for Land Use and Development. I hope everyone's having a great day. As many of you know, my name is Melanie Sims. I'm a principal planner with the town and will be facilitating tonight's meeting. I'm joined by Bayer Vella, planning manager, and Paul Melcher, our community and economic development director. And as always, our role here is to help support you through the discussion tonight. First and foremost, we always want to start off, if this is anyone's first meeting with the Land Use and Development Group, if you'd please raise your virtual hand or unmute yourself so you can introduce yourself to the group. So if this is anyone's first meeting, please feel free to raise your hand. Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Robb, resident of Oro Valley for 26 years.
Okay, thank you for joining. And then Kate?
Hi there, I'm Kate Houghton with the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection, just listening in this evening. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kate. All right, I think that was everyone. Mostly see a lot of familiar faces. I do ask that if you are able to please have your camera on so we can see each other and raise your hand so we can hear your voice. However, if you need to, you can also use the chat this evening because the number one priority is making sure that your voices are heard. Now I'm going to share a presentation. We're going to stay in presentation mode for a bit tonight as we go through the land use map changes, but then we will switch to using the virtual whiteboard later this evening. And if you're unable to get your camera on, please don't worry about it. Hopefully you can still participate by raising your virtual hand or definitely use the chat. Just one moment while I pull up the presentation. All right, so tonight's focus is to continue the discussions on the land use map and gather your responses on the first draft of the revised amendment criteria, the goals, policies, and actions related to development. This meeting is a result of the previous 3 meetings you all had over this last month. With that said, we may not get through everything tonight. That is okay, as the most important thing, again, is to gather all of your feedback. And if needed, we will schedule another online meeting for next Thursday, May 8th. Now, our aim for this meeting is to achieve consensus on the items that we'll go through tonight. And as a group, you define the term consensus during your orientation meeting. So just as a reminder, it is something that everyone can accept. That may not mean that everyone agrees with everything, but you accept it as being what's best for the community. Please keep that in mind as we go through the items this evening. And also just a quick reminder about the ground rules that everyone accepted. I need everyone's help to make this meeting efficient and productive. Again, we have a lot to get through, so please stay focused on the task at hand. Also, disagreements may happen, and that's okay, especially when we're talking about very important things like we are tonight. But I do just ask everyone to keep respectful to one another as we aim for consensus. So we're going to get right into it and get started with the land use map parcel specific changes. So over the past 2 meetings, those that were in person, you had a great discussion about the land use map and potential changes. As a reminder, especially for those joining for the first time tonight, the land use map does not grant property rights like permitted uses, building height, setbacks, etc. However, it does set the community's guidance on how land should be used in Oro Valley. Now, your group did discuss 2 types of land use map changes in the previous meetings. I know the screen's a little bit busy, but what it shows is all of the housekeeping changes that this group agreed or recommended to make during this process. Again, these changes are really just to make sure that the land use map aligns with existing development and zoning. And the changes that the group recommended are numbers 1 through 8. They're highlighted in blue. They are mostly built areas or areas where, again, the zoning needs to be lined up with the land use map. Now, we did go in depth on these, especially 1 through 8 through those meetings. So I don't aim to spend a lot of time discussing these tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions you folks have. I definitely just wanted to follow up and give an update on what those changes are. Now, in addition to the housekeeping items, we also discussed 2 other potential changes. One was in Innovation Park, which is the area just north of the number 9. And the other was Mercado del Rio, which is the commercial center where the current Caliber Collusion and Breakmasters is located. In follow-up from our discussions a couple meetings ago, I do want to let folks know that we did reach out to the private property owners for those requests. When it comes to the Innovation Park requests, it was to allow the parcels that have a neighborhood commercial office general plan land use designation to rezone to tech park without going through the general plan amendment process. Now, again, we did reach out to get some clarification because I know there were a lot of questions last time about that request. We didn't hear back from that private property owner, but staff, we did look closer at the request as well as the applicable sites that it would make this change for. And we do not recommend that this group move forward on that request at this time. The reasons being is that tech park zoning allows kind of larger uses like assembly, manufacturing, wholesaling, and those types of businesses aren't compatible with the neighborhood commercial office land use designation. The neighborhood commercial office land use designation, it really is for your neighborhood serving type of commercial uses. And already within that designation, the zoning districts aligned with that are commercial and they allow office, technical services, and more of your professional type businesses, which still fit with Innovation Park, but maintains that kind of neighborhood scale development. Now, the owner who made this request, they can still request this later, but again, it's staff's recommendation that we don't do this at this moment. With that, I do want to have a discussion about it though. So if you have questions or comments, would you please raise your virtual hand? And this is for the Innovation Park requests. Phil.
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry I missed some of the previous meetings, and maybe it's just a lack of understanding, but this pretty much rules out maybe I don't understand it. This pretty much rules out any of the manufacturing tech office type things that you spoke about, or is that just in the neighborhood commercial district or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this would just not allow those tech park uses in the neighborhood commercial office designation or any of those zoning aligned with that. It still would, we still do have a lot of Commerce Office Park. That's the majority of Innovation Park, which is zoned tech park and can have those uses. So it's
Okay.
not eliminating those uses completely.
It's just not showing here. We don't show everything. We're just showing the ones that were under consideration.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Rosa?
So they can still request those uses, but they would have to go through a process. And
Correct.
they were looking to have it changed so that they would make it easier for them to request those uses.
Correct. And I apologize, I interrupted you halfway through.
Yeah.
Yes, so they can definitely still request to rezone to tech park. What this would mean is they would still need to do the general plan amendment 2 to Commerce Office Park. So the process would be what it is now versus they were requesting it to only require the rezoning.
Oh, okay. So it's a higher bar. They have to meet the
Yeah.
the tier 2. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. So with a head nod or thumbs up, do you all agree to not make this change at this time? Or does that work for the group? Okay. Now, the second area that we did talk about that there were still some lingering questions about was Mercado del Rio. So right now that area is all community regional commercial. It's zoned C2, which is our highest intensity commercial district. And we had talked about, an anticipated change maybe having this be more of a master planned community to allow more mixed use development in this area. Your comments were, you weren't sure if this was a good change to make without reaching out to the property owners. I do want to let you know we did reach out to the brokerage group who owns the vacant parcels closest to the trailhead. So it's where there's a salon in that area too. So it's those around the salon, if you're familiar with the area. And they are interested, but per your discussion last time, we also suggest not changing the land use map to master plan community at this point, but rather identifying this area as a potential mixed use location in the goals, policies, and actions, which we'll get to tonight. So we made the change there instead, and this would also require then when the property owner, if they are interested and they work with even the existing property owners, they come in and make that request. But it's at least the direction is there within the goals, policies, and actions. And again, happy to clarify, or if there's comments or questions, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so everybody, oh, McKenna?
Hello. I have a question. So what would be the reason to not give them that designation in the general plan? Like just with hopes of getting the general plan approved during the vote? Like, is there a specific reason why you guys have made that recommendation, I guess?
Sure. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard last time was a want, and this is for you guys to decide, was a want to make sure all the property owners, even those with the existing businesses, to be on board with this change. Now, again, we only reached out to those with the vacant land. So if you all as a group think we need or want us to continue to reach out to the existing businesses, there's a doctor's office, some car shops, and that salon, that's where we would suggest not making the change on the land use map.
Is just because you haven't had the opportunity to like talk individually with each of them, is what you're saying?
Fire, sorry, you're unmuted.
Oh, no worries,
But-
no worries. Hey, McKenna, great question. So it essentially, what we heard the group ask us was to conduct what we call a neighborhood meeting with all the property owners. And that is a foundational aspect of the individual process. So, so that's why our sense was, to go ahead and let it wait for the individual process. We would notice every property owner in the development and everyone around the development and hold a neighborhood meeting and have this discussion. But what is kind of a middling point that Malini was making was that we still, based on listening to you folks, think that there should be a policy that says, hey, this is a good area. So put it in words, but don't put it on the map. And then require a neighborhood meeting process later where we can get not only the existing property owners, but the surrounding properties owner involved in the discussion. So hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. I was just curious why the swap, so that answers my question. Thank you.
No, good question.
And then Cheryl?
I just recall when they were trying to do the self-storage place and whatnot there, that the doctor's office itself had a real concern with that in the nights when they sometimes meet patients there. So I think it's a good idea to do exactly what you said.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thanks for that context. Yep. Okay, so with a head nod or thumbs up, everybody okay with Mercado del Rio not changing on the map, but we'll look at those actions here later this evening. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, well, hopefully you can see, I know again, it's pretty busy. We went through 1 through 8 in depth a couple meetings ago, but you'll see that 9 and 10 are pink because I do want to discuss those with you all this evening. Before though, I move on to give more information about numbers 9 and 10, I do want to check in with the group. Do you have any questions about 1 through 8 and the changes for those ones? Again, they're housekeeping just to match up the existing zoning and development. Okay, it looks like most people are done reading, so I'm gonna go to the next slide, and if you have any questions, we can always come back. Okay, so number 9. This area we wanted to discuss with you guys is another possible land use map change. It would be, we consider this housekeeping as well. So some of you may be familiar, the area just kind of right outside Catalina State Park, so across from the marketplace. It is known as Kelly Ranch. Recently, actually this month, Pima County is now going through with purchasing this property. And their purpose for purchasing it is to preserve the site and eventually integrate it with Catalina State Park. So currently, our land use designations on the site have neighborhood commercial office towards Oracle, low density residential kind of on that south side, and then resort golf course almost where on the north side. We would suggest for this group to change it all to open space. I do want to let you know we did reach out to Pima County and they have no problem with us changing it, and it would be more accurate even with their plans for the site. So are there any questions about this change? Rosa, or Dawn, sorry, Dawn and then Rosa.
Does changing this, I heard that Pima County was buying this thing and was somewhat disappointed in what they were going to do with it, because this is going to actually, this designation is actually going to hurt the marketplace and people coming in the marketplace, because it's taking the residential away from there, and that's what the marketplace dearly, dearly needs. So while I understand us changing it to open space, etc., there's a message in changing it to open space that's going to go out to the development community and people who are looking to possibly move a business here. And they go in, they look at these land use designations, et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't know if that particular thing has actually been thought of, and was it brought up, et cetera, in the discussion of just changing it. I'll let her go at that.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. And our aim is to pair up with the plans for the site, which would be not having development on it, which is why we're proposing open space. There is still some residential in that kind of cutout side. Now that is larger lots, I will say, to the south of the pink. That would stay low density residential. Other comments or thoughts? Rosa, then Phil.
Do you know how many acres this represents?
Fire, do you remember off the top of your head?
It's a swag, Rosa, about 60 acres, 70.
Actually, Kate knows it's 109.
Thank you.
Kate.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite a bit, but it makes sense. And this is just housekeeping, right? They're buying the land, so it's a done deal, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I don't see any problem with it.
Okay, Phil.
Yes, I'm all for the open space, and I appreciate the comments of Bill about, the marketplace wanting more people around, but people these days don't walk to the marketplace, I don't think, very often. And that may increase a little bit when the apartments get built in the marketplace, but I think there are other opportunities, and I don't think we're going to turn developers off. And if developers had eyes on this, you would think they would have made an offer before Pima County did, unless they were blocked somehow. So I'm all for the open space. Thank you.
I do want to mention, in terms of the development potential on these sites, there's a lot of hillsides and slopes in these areas. So there, even though it's 109 acres, even if it were developed, you couldn't develop on all 109, just due to the sloped areas. Other comments, questions? Okay, by a head nod or thumbs up, everybody accept this change? Okay. So the next one I want to discuss with the group, we discussed some of this, is looking at Oracle Road, specifically from McGee to Ina. So Oracle Road from McGee to Ina, currently in our plan, is neighborhood commercial office. So I do want to kind of give a little context of what does neighborhood commercial office really mean. That truly is commercial areas that are intended to serve the surrounding neighborhoods. Where what we propose is changing this whole area to community regional commercial. And what that is that's commercial areas that serve the larger region. So I kind of want to walk through what's in this area to help this group make a recommendation. So when you look at that aerial map on your screen, looking between McGee and Ina, what you guys discussed a couple weeks ago was the west side, so your left side of that map of Oracle, excuse me. So that's what's shaded in red. So the group's already said, hey, yeah, let's make that community regional commercial. What we're asking is for all the other areas that are outlined in red to be the same. And when you start at McGee and go south on the east side, your zoning is kind of all over the place a little bit in terms of commercial uses. You start off with our most intense C2, then you go to like some neighborhood commercial, more service oriented. Then you go into Pima County and you also get service oriented and ramp back up to more intense uses towards Ina. So some of this would be aspirational for the area. But when we're looking at what's there and what's built, at McGee and Oracle on the southeast corner, is the Trader Joe's. So that's kind of that big, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the big white L-shaped building. When you go south, there's again those service-oriented businesses, medical, vet, daycare. I do want to point out, though, the parcel with a star is currently vacant. And it's zoned RS. So this change wouldn't give them, again, more property rights because that's within their zoning district, but it would provide a path where they could try to rezone to like a higher intensity commercial district. They could ask to rezone to C2 if they meet all those requirements. I will say within our C2 zoning district, you have to have a certain amount of acreage that they don't meet. They would have to pair up with some of their neighbors to meet that acreage. Now, as you go further south, you have a lot of restaurants. The Guadalajara Grill is there, Tap and Bottles in there. And then most of you probably know the corner of Ina and Oracle, where you have Whole Foods, Safeway. And so why staff is recommending that this whole area goes to community regional commercial is none of these businesses are only neighborhood servicing. You are drawing people in from Tucson, Casa Adobes, and all of Oro Valley, even probably Marana to some of these areas. So with that, I want to again ask if there's questions, comments, clarifications. Rosa?
So if this was not done and one of these property owners or two or three wanted to do that, it would have to go through what process?
So if this wasn't done, it would really only affect the business or the parcel, excuse me, with a star on it. And if they wanted to rezone to C2, they would have to do a general plan amendment as well.
So that this would allow them to just do a rezone if they could get the amount of property they needed to qualify for the C2. By
Correct.
joining with some, okay.
Yeah.
Are there homes behind that vacant lot? I can't tell.
There are, and so right now though, they can rezone all the way up to C1
Okay,
without a general plan amendment. So it's really that C2 that's the only change for them, and they would have to get more of their neighbors involved to try to do that rezoning. For context, they have tried to rezone in the past to C1 and they still needed their neighbors' help to do that. And there wasn't interest from the surrounding neighbors.
so what,
Not that I'm saying it can't be done, but
Okay.
just wanted to.
so what, is there a height difference in C1 and C2?
No, it's both 25 feet, 2-story.
Okay. I mean, I'm not strong one way or the other. It seems to me everything else in that area is, community regional commercial. So I feel like, you're not really robbing anybody of much. The height would be the same, and usually that's what people complain about the most, and that would be developed one way or another. I mean, they do have property rights. So just want to hear what everyone else has to say.
Byron, I don't know if you had something to add. Oh, no, okay.
No, I really don't. I mean, I think Rose hit the nail on the head. And the Star parcel, really, the vision of that property owner over the years has been doing restaurant, drugstore type uses, not C2. But so, we're presenting to this group, really, I think it just makes the map more accurate is really the bottom line. That it is, again, not neighborhood serving and more regional serving. So thanks.
And then McKenna and Phil, you're next.
I had a question about, well, sorry, first let me answer this. I think that this makes complete sense. I agree that this is not just an Oro Valley location. I mean, Handles alone is now bringing in so much traffic into that area. So I think this is a wise adjustment for the map. Is Tohono Chul Park listed as as NCO, or is that listed as park? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, so the Tohono Chul, and just give me one moment while I look
Yeah.
it up. Nope. I believe it is listed as park right
Okay,
now.
thank you.
Yep.
As I was gonna say, should we include that? But then that doesn't make sense. So never mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Phil?
Yeah, I think Rosa alluded to it, but we're just sort of adjusting to what is really happening there. Everything there is CRC right now, pretty much. And I wonder how they got in there if it was zoned NCO.
So again, this is just, so on the left side is the land use designation. Their zoning is on the very right side of the screen. So that's where all their rights are. So they all develop to their zoning, but the zoning doesn't always have to match the land use, because if you develop within your existing zoning rights, you are not required to go back and update the land use map. This is the time when we do that update for accuracy.
Okay.
Does that help clarify?
Yeah, I think, well, I understand what you're saying, but the concept is foreign to me. I don't know why we have both sometimes, but we don't have to get into that. I'm just going to accept it. But let's go for it. CRC it is.
And I say it is confusing when our zoning names and our land use names are the same. So I hear you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Don?
I just want to throw in, I doubt very seriously that anybody would come forward with any kind of a zoning change there that would downzone it to something even remotely close to residential, et cetera. So yes, I think that the proper description of this is just bring everything in line and I agree with, changing the map as you originally stated.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands raised, so thumbs up, head nod if you think we should make this change as well as, again, as it being mostly housekeeping. Okay. So I'm going to move us on. So kind of continuing with the conversation about land use designations. When we talked a couple meetings ago about the different types of amendments, type 1 and type 2. Now, this group did decide not to change the definitions. However, through that conversation, there was discussion about the description of neighborhood commercial office land use designation. So again, this is the general plan designation and its allowance for residential development. So I do want to follow up with this group on that conversation. The existing description of the general plan land use designation is what's highlighted in the yellow box. Now, the land use designation, again, is really thematic. It's really to provide guidance of what should be within that land use. Whereas the zoning, which is shown on the bottom, the neighborhood commercial office zone, which Phil, this is where it gets confusing because they have the same names. But the zoning district is what really gives those specific requirements on how residential development is actually done on the ground, if you will. So within the zoning district, there is that cap that was discussed last time where you can't have more than 50% of that land being residential. But again, taking a level up in the land use designation, the description currently says residential development may be included on a case-by-case basis. So hearing what the conversation was a couple weeks ago, but also this group's conversations when we talked about housing and even mixed use, we are suggesting updating this language to what's shown in all caps in red. And the reason being is to just add some clarity of when residential development should be accommodated. And this also gets to making to getting to those mixed use areas. So having residential when it's complementing the surrounding commercial areas. And again, this aims to help that residential doesn't take up the whole area. It does have that kind of split and support. So I want to give everyone a moment to read through these and then please raise your virtual hand for questions or comments. Hal?
Yeah, looking at the wording, the new wording in red, you're saying residential development is accommodated when it's comparable adjacent commercial areas. Now, what about a situation where you have vertical integration of residential and commercial? In other words, first floor retail and then residential above.
Okay.
How would that work?
Yeah, we'd want to make sure that was accommodated too, so we can definitely look at that wording to make sure that both types are included.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, that was a good point. Yeah, looks like most folks are done reading. So other comments, questions? Okay. So does Cheryl?
Just a question. Does the word accommodated mean that absolutely we would allow it, or would there be other reasons potentially to not want it in a particular location? Like, suppose the traffic is really bad, or suppose, I don't know, suppose something else gets put next to it that doesn't necessarily support.
Yeah, so this wouldn't remove them meeting all development requirements and zoning requirements and still having to analyze the traffic and things of that nature. It's just setting guidance for when residential could be appropriate within this designation. If that helps clarify.
Oh, I see Byers' comment. I like that.
Okay. So for those of you who didn't, it's in the chat. It's instead of may,
To be
maybe it's
accommodated.
adding may be accommodated. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
like that.
okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Not seeing other hands up. So we'll add the word may, and then we'll also work on wording to make sure, as Hal said, that lower level commercial with upper level residential is also included in this. With that, does everybody accept this as a first draft headed in the right direction? Okay. Oh, Don? And you're muted. Don.
As,
There you go.
as a first draft, yes.
Yes, yeah. We'll make some revisions and get it back out to the group, definitely. Okay, I now want to move us into our kind of what we call the macro changes for a land use map. These were the maps that you guys very kindly went around to and marked up, or you provided some comments in your homework. For those of you who weren't at the in-person meetings or didn't do the homework, don't worry, we're going to discuss. But for the planning area boundary, now this is what's highlighted on the screen in kind of that pinkish color. And as you can tell, it does extend beyond the town's boundary, and it's areas that the town may not control, but it serves as a, why we want to include it in our land use map is it lets other jurisdictions know that we want to be involved in the discussions of the development in these areas, but it also influences growth and development in Oro Valley. Now, this map is not an annexation map, although it does include all of our annexation strategy areas. And it doesn't exactly mean that there will be development in these areas. Again, it's just that these are what influences our development as a town. So the comments we received that I want to kind of discuss is one was to remove Catalina State Park. The other was to remove the areas south and west of Ina. And then through the mapping exercise, we did get a comment about extending the boundary east to Law and Cantata. I do want to point out that the boundary currently includes Law and Cantata. I apologize. The road wasn't very well labeled last time, so I do want to let folks know that it's included. And then we got comments about extending south to Rudisell. So that's where number 4 is. We did extend that south to include the commercial area at Rudisell and Oracle, but also all the way over to La Cholla to get the Northwest Hospital, which is on that corner, and then move it back up. So I want to maybe first, before we open to general comments, let's talk about removing Catalina State Park first. So what does this group think of that? Keep in mind, these are just areas that influence our development. So Phil and then Don.
Yes, I mean, what harm is there in leaving it in? I don't see any. We should want to exert our influence, our opinion on anything developed on our boundaries. I don't know, that's just my feeling. Catalina State Park is probably the least infectious or invasive of all these other areas. But even that, why wouldn't we want to know what's going on there and have some input into it? Or I don't understand the question.
Nope. And that's why it was included even 10 years ago is, it should influence our development, right? We all know views are important, and that's what we're viewing. So
Yeah,
that's where we have it there now. Sorry.
I would leave it, but whatever.
We're going to go Don, then Rosa.
I completely agree. that just lets people know that we're interested in that area. And I think that the possibility of Catalina State Park somehow going away is pretty remote. But some strange things are happening these days with federal budgets and state budgets, et cetera, et cetera. And somebody just may say, gee, I know how to save a whole bunch of money. Let's just up Catalina State Park. And if it's not in their area, then we're just kind of caught with our pants down. So I would definitely leave it within the area boundary.
Okay. And then Rosa?
Can you remind me why we said to remove areas south and west of Ina?
So that was a comment that somebody in the group made. So I don't know if that person's on the call tonight. And I will say, I think some of it was we asked this through part of their homework, and this conversation may change people's perspectives with the additional context we're able to give as a group. So
I mean, I don't see why we would do that. That's a really dense area. And I just think that, you know, unless there's a compelling reason, I would leave it in.
thank you. And I would say if if as a group you all want to keep Orange Grove in and extend, especially if you want to extend to Rudisill, we'd probably want to keep it in so there's not
Right.
a weird island. If you will.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
And again, it's not saying that we're going to develop that more intensely. It's just saying that that influences our development as a town. I think Don and then Bill.
Have to get that mark off of audio. Is the area that we've got there, is that very intense or very dense residential area?
For where the south and west of Ina.
Number 2.
It is residential. There is a lot of larger lots in there. There are older areas in that.
Yeah, but it just when you take a look at annexations, residential areas are they're not if you will, annexation friendly. They're very intense and very hard to do. And I imagine that may be why it was put there, because it would be way too hard to annex. But again, just in general, I think that my personal feelings are that the planning area boundary should be wide. As a notice to everybody that we're interested in what goes on in those areas, because it may somehow affect us in a way that we have no idea at this point. Thank you.
Yep, and that's a good point. So the Foothills Mall is also in our annexation strategy, but just so everyone, we can't skip all the residential between our town boundaries and just scoop up Foothills Mall. If we wanted to annex Foothills Mall, we would have to pave a path forward to the trail to that area, if you will, and get some of that annexation area.
Which we could do.
Yeah. Yeah, and these areas, I should say also, it's not just development that they influence the traffic, character, lifestyle of the town, because they are close and nearby. So however they develop will influences the town. So that's why we wanted to include those. Okay, we're gonna go Bill, then we're gonna go Hal, and then Phil. Back to Phil. So
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. I agree. I don't even know why we would take any of these out. And I'm also a little confused about remove areas south and west of Ina. I mean, Ina is east and west, so I'm not exactly sure what that means. And so really, what area are we talking about? South of Ina, I get, but west of Ina, I don't understand. That's just a comment. I think the Catalina State Park should absolutely stay in. The Kelly Ranch, which the county is buying, has already talked about wanting to add to Catalina State Park from that Kelly Ranch at some point in the future. So that's going to get even bigger. But I agree with what's said. It should be broad, and I think all 4 of them should stay.
Okay. Hal, and then back to Phil.
Yeah, I agree with what Bill just said. I was involved in the discussion looking at the south end of the planning area and suggesting we need to go further south. And there's 2 things to keep in mind here. First of all, that's a large urban unincorporated area. It's unlikely any other jurisdiction is going to take that, at least in the foreseeable future. So it's either Oro Valley or it stays unincorporated. And the advantage to having residential areas come into the town of Oro Valley, there's twofold. One, it increases potential state shared revenues because that's based on population. And also it increases potential sales tax revenues from people that buy things online. If you're in the town, you have to pay a little extra sales tax when you're buying something online, and that goes to the town. So I think for that reason, the town should be very expansive in its approach to planning to the south end.
Thank you, Hal. And then Phil.
Yes, I was going to go beyond what we're talking here. Maybe it's too late, but I agree that we should keep everything that's here and extend the areas that we've talked about. But I wonder why we don't want to pull a preemptive on Marana, who, in my opinion, is very aggressive and just wants to build, and why we wouldn't take some of those, at least for discussion purposes, take some of those areas in green between Marana and Oro Valley, and even along west of Thornydale. The impression is that sooner or later, Marana's just going to pave it all over and put apartments, buildings, and big retail on our borders. And I don't know if that's what we want. We may not have a say in it, but we should at least have some forewarning and discussion about it.
Yeah, so I might ask Mr. Villa to clarify if I'm wrong here, but I think some of the areas why they're not included is because they are primarily residential or large lot residential, especially kind of north of between like the state land area and where you see Marana's limits. It's some large lots, but I could be wrong there. So
Okay.
I'll let Buyer maybe if he has some context.
Louis, you're right on the money. They're all large lot. That doesn't mean they can't be included. So what do you guys think?
Is there any downside to including them?
I don't think so. I think we need to stay out of Marana limits, of course, the yellow area.
Yes.
But no, I don't see a downside.
Okay. I don't know. It's a suggestion. I'm no land planner. I just, again, have an impression of Marana and what they would do with anything they annex. That's all. And, I understand about the large lots. Probably are not going to be paved over and apartments put in, but at least we should protect ourselves and have some say in it. That's all. I'll leave it to the experts.
Well, I'm going to kick it back to you all. So what are your thoughts of extending it further west? And I believe what Phil's talking about is, again, if you can see my mouse, it's the areas west of Thornydale that you can see kind of the aerial. That's what's not Marana. And even kind of up into north of where the 7 is. That's part of state land. So Joe? And not that you have to respond to that, but I think you had a comment.
Well, listening to the discussion, I'm struck with one, we should be as aggressive as we can for the planning area boundary. So we shouldn't be removing anything. Number 2, while I understand and appreciate the comments on large lots, again, I think we don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now or whatever. So I think we should be, as long as we can pass the blush test, we should be as aggressive as we can about defining planning area boundary.
Thank you, Joe. And I saw in the chat, folks also said extend. So just to summarize what I heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we don't want to remove Catalina State Park or south the area around Ina. So keep everything as is. Keep the extension to Rudisell, but also extend the map as much as we can west to capture that area as well. Thumbs up or head nod, is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So again, we will revise this map and we will get it back out to you folks as well. Okay, so similar with that kind of notion is the urban service boundary. So this is a little bit different. What it aims to do is to show, indicate areas that are, so what's in the blue is the urban service boundary. And it indicates areas where there's already existing infrastructure or infrastructure is planned. So these areas may receive increased development or land use intensity. And again, that's because infrastructure is already there or is planned. Now, what we heard through, again, this was the online comments or even the map exercise that you all participated in a couple weeks ago, was to remove the area north of the town limits where there isn't infrastructure. I do want to provide some context about that, though, and with regards to that area is what we call Arroyo Grande. It is 9,000 acres north of town. And there is on the land use map some development plan there if we were to ever annex. So even though there might not be infrastructure there now, it is planned eventually. Another comment we got was similar to the last map, which I think we've all decided you've all decided, excuse me, as a group, you don't want to remove areas south or west of Ina. And then the new comments we got through the mapping exercise was extend the urban service boundary to include Catalina. So that's where the number 3 is shown. And what we did was we updated the urban service boundary to basically match the same outline of the planning area boundary. So now they both align. And then again, similar comments is extend to La Encantada. That was already included. So I just want to clarify where the number 4 is, and then extend to Rudisell where the number 5 is. So thoughts on this one? Phil?
I may have missed something in prior meetings, but what the heck is an urban service boundary? And, how is that different from what we were just talking about? It's a little more expansive, but I don't know what it does for us to keep it or remove it.
So no, great question. So it's very similar. It does align with the planning area boundary. So that's the red line on the screen. You can see for the most part of the lines, but it's really showing areas where infrastructure already exists or is planned to be for development. So that's, for instance, why you'll see the difference of Catalina State Park isn't in this one. And that's why, because there's no infrastructure there or planned to be there in the future.
But what's our obligation if we are in the urban service boundary or if we opt out of the urban service boundary? What's the difference to us?
So I will say there is part of the amendment types of amendments. There are, if you are adding or changing the urban service boundary, you may have to do a general plan amendment. So it does affect that aspect of properties who, for instance, the state land A80, which is the area between Shannon and Thornydale. If they were outside of the urban service boundary, if we remove them, they would have to go through a general plan amendment to change the urban service boundary.
So this basically means that if somebody wants to develop something there, we're sort of obligated to do the urban services for that area? I'm just not hearing what is an urban service boundary. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Let me see if Buyer if he minds trying to clarify.
I'll give it a whack. this is a term that was created by the state and it's legislation towards general plans. So it is definitely wonky, Phil, without a question. Really, when push comes to shove, it's a signal of where there's existing infrastructure or the town, once a developer puts it in and pays for it, would be willing to keep up the infrastructure. And so if there's new development outside of an area designated as a USB, in terms of process, it makes it harder in terms of getting an approval. It makes and requires the property owner and the town to make that determination. Do we want to service this area in the future when it comes to maintaining roads or water infrastructure or whatnot that the developer is required to put in and pay for?
So having a smaller urban service boundary may obligate us less and bring everything up for discussion if they want to develop? I don't think of it, Phil, as an obligation. It's an area of feasibility. If you're on the USB, the town is not committed to maintain roads or whatnot, but that would be worked out during the rezoning process of who's doing what. And the town's history has always been that the developer pays for all the infrastructure. And then it's a discussion as part of the rezoning, whether it's private or public infrastructure. So it's wonky. It really, at the end of the day, puts more of a spotlight on service delivery in the town's decision-making. So we're slightly less obligated if we keep it outside of the urban service boundary. Okay, you didn't want me to use obligated, I know. But either way, we're sort of protected because of the zoning and the way we interact with the developers.
Right. And if it's outside of the USB, we're saying we're not in the least bit interested in having the conversation.
Okay.
Thank you. Bill, then Dawn, then Rosa. Oh, Bill, you're muted.
I'm confused about why we would want to remove the area north of town limits. I understand there's no infrastructure. However, when we were talking about state land for the 880 to the west of us, which I'm interested whether that's in our urban service boundary. But anyway, without the state land was talking about, well, if we can work with you on the 880, we'd be interested then in looking at Royal Grande. And at Royal Grande, which is the area north, we are the logical municipality to annex that area, if not all of it, but at least a lot of it. So I don't know why we would want to take it out. Help me understand that.
So that was a comment that folks in this group made. So it's for discussion with this group to decide. I would agree with you, Bill. We know that area does have land use designation and is planned for development at some point. And it's not, if we annexed it, it would be War Valley, but it's also, others could as well. But so that's why it was there originally. But again, it was comments made from this group. So especially if you feel differently, please make sure your voice is heard, even if it's in the chat. Let's go Dawn, Rosa, and then Tony.
Okay, Buyer, I think you were safe if you could have stopped after your description that it was a state idea to have urban service boundaries. I think that kind of tells it all. But I think one of the things that I have found in my experience with on the Planning and Zoning Commission in talking about annexations, et cetera, and especially when it comes to state land. I think the urban service boundary the state land trust will look at that and go, oh, that's our area. And the people that seem to be interested in it are Oro Valley, which is music to their ears, because an Oro Valley address generates more revenue, basically. So I think, for Phil's sake, urban service boundary does send a message to state land trust people also. And correct me if I'm wrong, Byron.
Thank you, and got the thumbs up from Buyer, so. Rosa, then Tony.
So I have two questions. Why would 2 be removed if area further south is in it? It makes no sense to me. So that makes no sense. So I think 2 should, if 4 and 5 are there, 2 should be part of it because it would zigzag. As far as 1 goes, I think I was listening on some of those discussions, and it was about just the idea of, do we have the kind of water resources to have our boundary accept land that's could be developed, but we would be providing the water. So I guess my question is, when you go through an annexation, all of that gets analyzed anyway, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
After we're not committing to it through this, it would all be analyzed through the annexation process.
Then I don't see any reason why all of them can't be in there, and it just goes to, over the next decade, we figure out what we've got water for, what we've got, gumption for, because it's quite a bit of expansion. But if the water is there and the revenue is necessary, then I would think the decisions would go that way. If the water isn't there, and that proves out to be the issue when the annexation analysis is done, then that answers your question. So I don't think there's any reason why over a decade that can't be part of the boundary for that type of analysis and discussion.
Thank you, Rosa. And then Tony? Oh, and Tony, you're muted.
I'm trying to figure out who owns it. Right now, the state owns it.
Correct. Yeah.
If a developer comes in, does it revert to Pima County? And then they could have county services, but not necessarily Oro Valley services.
Yeah, and to your point, I know some of you asked a couple meetings ago if this area was included in Pima County's land use map. I did check, it is. So they do have it on their land use map as well.
And then would the people there decide if they want to be part of Oro Valley or the county once the area is developed?
So if it's developed and there's residents living there, yes. I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. They could then ask to be annexed into Oro Valley if there's residents living there.
Or they could choose to stay Pima County.
Correct.
Which means we wouldn't maintain anything. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
I do want to say in the chat, I appreciate Randy and McKenna have put some comments in the chat about aligning the urban service boundary with the planning area boundary, except for Catalina State Park, because we discussed. And then with that would be when we update the planning area boundary to go further west, is updating this one to go further west too. Okay, so on that note, I don't see any other hands up. So everybody, just to kind of summarize what I heard was keep everything the way it is. Don't remove any of those areas. Keep 3 and 5, but then also extend to the west when we do it with the planning area boundary. Is that a Joe?
I want to make sure I understand what you just said,
Mhm.
that we are going to keep 1 and 2 as is.
Yeah, so don't remove those. Keep them, keep the urban service boundary, all the blue area as shown on the screen, but we will extend it west when we extend the planning area boundary.
So we are not removing 1 and 2. We're going to expand it.
That's what I heard. We're not removing 1 and 2.
Okay, well, I thought you said the opposite. That's why I'm asking.
No, I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Yep, does that accurately summarize the conversation? Okay. All right, then the map we kind of ended on last time was the growth area map. Again, the growth areas, this is required by state law, and it really is areas where you can expect, you know, infrastructure expansion or improvements to support a variety of uses. This includes residential, commercial, even office uses. Primarily, so in Oro Valley, we have 2 different types of growth areas. The first is Tier 1 growth area, and that's again back to our conversation about regional commercial centers. So those are our commercial areas that for the most part are drawing people in from not just they're serving not just Oro Valley residents, they will draw people in from other jurisdictions. As you can see on the map, those are outlined in blue, and they really are almost on the kind of boundaries of Oro Valley because that's where they're drawing, or along Oracle Road, which is, as you know, a state highway. So it's really drawing folks into those areas from Casa Adobes, Saddlebrook, Marana, etc. Then a Tier 2 growth area is more of those Oro Valley resident or neighborhood serving commercial areas. So for instance, like the Fry's on right down the street from Town Hall on Lambert and La Cañada. For the most part, that's serving residents in Oro Valley. Versus the Fry's on Oracle, you're getting a lot of folks from Catalina and Saddlebrook at that Fry's, if you will. So with that discussion, what we heard during the last meeting was adding where the number 1 is, Thornydale and Tangerine as a Tier 1. That is, some of that is in Marana, which is okay. But that also includes the State Land 880 and that what was previously planned for commercial in that area. We also heard to add Lambert and La Cholla, and I apologize, we meant that as a tier 2, excuse me. So it's pink. That's where the number 2 is, and that is the area where there's commercial on, why it's only the north corners is because that's where the commercial is. So they're zoned commercial on both those corners, and one of them already has an approved plan with a sizable grocery store, gas station, and some other shops. Then what we heard was to extend the Tier 1 area down Oracle to Orange Grove, which actually was in the plan last time, so that made sense. And then the one that I wanted to discuss with the group was reclassifying First and Tangerine as Tier 1. So I kind of wanted to ask the group is, you know, it's been a Tier 2 as more of a neighborhood or Oro Valley resident serving commercial area. But, you know, definitely want to hear from those of you who experience different. If you think, though, it is more of a regional center drawing people in from other jurisdictions and other areas, if it should be classified as Tier 1. And that, we did kind of end the conversation last meeting on that one, so I just wanted to give an opportunity to discuss a little further. McKenna?
I think that the first 3 make sense, obviously with the Lambert and La Cholla is Tier 2. But I think those first 3 make sense. Honestly, I don't know that I see First and Tangerine as a Tier 1 solely because I don't know that it has as much revenue in that one as the other Tier 1s do, as I'm thinking of, and as much traffic. And I could be incorrect on that, open to hearing more, but based off of the like Avia apartments and everything, I would worry that we would get some people that are like, whoa, oh, wait a minute, if we reclassified that one. So that would be my initial on that. And then I do want to loop back. I know that we had talked about this a little bit last time. I had mentioned La Cañada and Naranja as adding in potential for the tier 2 growth. Again, not that like tier 1 growth, but just saying that it's I think that we will see more like participation in that general area within the next 10 years. So I think it would be wise to make sure that it's accurately reflecting that. And I think that that would make sense. But other than that, I think the rest of these all look fantastic. And yeah, again, I'm not positive about number 4 of reclassifying First and Tangerine as tier 1. I feel more confident in it remaining at tier 2. Yeah, but again, open to hearing otherwise.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Colleen. We haven't heard from you yet this evening.
Thank you. I would just like a very quick refresh on 1 versus 2.
Yeah, so our tier 1s, that's really your regional commercial centers. So you're really pulling
Okay.
in folks from other jurisdictions outside of Oro Valley. Tier 2 is your more neighborhood commercial centers or serving mostly Oro Valley residents.
Okay, thank you.
People aren't driving into it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then let's see, Hal, then Phil, and then Rosa.
Yeah, regarding Area 3, since we've talked about expanding the urban service boundary and the planning area boundary down to Rudisill, I would think you'd want to expand that down to Rudisill as well, rather than stopping in Orange Grove. And for Area 4, I think it's more of a neighborhood serving commercial area, so I would not reclassify that.
Okay, and I will say we did look at the area south of Orange Grove to Rudisill, and this is for the group to discuss. The only reason we didn't propose that at this time is when you go south of Orange Grove, it's really more office uses and you get a lot more residential in that area. It's not as much intense commercial drawing folks in as it is north of Orange Grove. If that makes sense, but up for discussion.
Yeah, there is some commercial south of Orange Grove as well. So I think it's a mix.
Yep. And then, okay, Phil, Rosa, then Kim.
Okay, I think reclassifying number 4, First and Tangerine, is problematic. And also probably is more of a neighborhood or a expanded neighborhood area, not a regional, because it's sort of like a dead end to people who coming down from Catalina or coming up from Tucson. You know, you come up First Avenue there, and most people don't go that way unless you live up this way. The only thing would change is if Costco went in there, which was rumored at one point, and then all bets are off. The other thing is that's a very difficult area for traffic. And I know that's part of a zoning discussion, but traffic is a big issue in that area. I know some of the things are being addressed and some aren't, but I think that should remain a tier 2.
Okay. And part of as you're thinking through number 4, is, thinking of who's shopping at that center, especially with like the Safeway. Is it folks from nearby Oro Valley, or is it going to the greater Oro Valley region coming to that center? Okay, I think it was Rosa next, then Kim and Dawn.
Yeah, the others I'm good on. Number 4, I would leave that because that was the biggest issue for a lot of people, is that it services people in Rancho Vistoso. And when the rezone came to that area, the biggest issue was if you added more density there, it was going to make it harder for the people who were coming down Rancho Vistoso Boulevard to get in there and use that that area. And most people want other commercial things to go in there because it is the closest to my home and to everybody living north of Moore. So, and then of course, anybody living up Rancho Vistoso Boulevard. So I would say keep that as a tier 1.
Thank you, Rosa. Kim and then Don.
Can you hear me okay? It's my
Yes.
first time speaking tonight. Okay. So I'm gonna be the unpopular opinion. But I look at that going back to that area number 4. You have the hospital, you have the marketplace, especially with planned developments in the marketplace. I feel like a more regional approach to commercial development in that area makes more sense. Not just for the local community, but people coming in from other areas of the region. So I support the reclassification to reclassify as tier 1, but like I said, probably unpopular decision or unpopular opinion.
Thank you. And we want the discussion from all angles, so appreciate it. Okay, I think Don and then Bill, and then we'll go back to Rosa.
I'll join the group that may be unpopular. That how much of the, let's say the southeast corner of Tangerine and First, how much of that is zoned currently as commercial? We're speaking basically about the Kai property, are we not?
So it's not just the Kai property. So there's the Kai property, which has 2 parcels zoned commercial C1. I can't off the top of my head think of the acreage. I apologize.
Right.
But then there's also the parcel north of Safeway that's still vacant. And then there's a parcel across the street from Rancho Vistoso all the way to the Goldar Ranch Fire Station is
Right.
vacant as well.
Right.
So it's all 3 corners, if you will.
Yep. Yes, I would agree that we should look at that as a tier 1. I play softball up in Saddlebrook, and you would be amazed at the number of people, residents of Saddlebrook, that I run into in that Safeway store. That's if they don't go to the Basha store up there, then that's basically their closest grocery store. And as we develop to the north, that's gonna be the path they're gonna take to that. So when I say it's the closest grocery store, I'm not talking about Walmart being a grocery store. So yeah, I think tier 1 is probably more appropriate. And I also think making tier 1 also brings it to a little higher viewpoint from the traffic standpoint. I think we all need to take a hard look at the traffic at that thing because it is somewhat problematic, but it's only problematic during the rush hour times. The rest of the time that intersection is, I don't want to say it's vacant, but it certainly isn't a traffic problem except during what we refer to as rush hour. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. We're gonna go to Sandy only because we haven't heard from you yet, and then we'll keep going down the list.
So Malini, the Kai property, wasn't the town approached by them to change the zoning because they wanted to put residential in there?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And also the property across, well, next door to Safeway and across the street, they wanted to put residential in. What I haven't heard is anybody wanting to put commercial in. And I know that Kai property has topographical issues. So for me, I would say leave it as tier 2 because it seems to be more appropriate for a neighborhood property. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a good clarification or a good point is that 3 of the corners do have a lot of vacant property. So, thinking of the intensity of commercial there too. Next was Don, then Rosa, then Bill.
Not I.
Oh, okay. I think your hand was, got it. Rosa?
So, I guess the side of the street that I'm most concerned with is the Safeway side, not the Kai property. Because of everything that came out during the Avila rezone, that is, going to be hugely problematic to develop. I mean, no matter what you try to do there because of the light alignment and the situation there. So it's currently a 2, correct?
Yeah, that whole intersection is currently.
How would making it a 1 benefit that situation? I mean, I understand the opinion was to bring in traffic from all over the place. Well, it is a traffic problem more than just rush hour. I mean, it's a traffic problem when kids get out of school. It's a traffic problem in the morning, like around 10 o'clock when all the people go shopping. It's always a traffic problem there. So I feel like whatever would make the most scrutiny, because really, I mean, acting as if that's going to become a regional hub for all of Oro Valley is not in the cards, in my opinion, for that property, just because of what we just went through with the Avila situation. So I think that it's going to be limited by that crazy configuration of that intersection. So I think whatever would make it less controversial, I think, is what it should stay, just because out of the respect for the 1,500 people who signed those petitions.
Okay. And then Bill and Joe.
Yeah, quickly on number 4, I think it should be a tier 2. I don't see that as being regional. I understand that the arguments for it, but I don't see that as regional, and I would like to see it stay at tier 2. I also wonder how come somebody wanted to add Lambert and La Choya as a tier 1. I understand that there's going to be some development there, but I can't see that as drawing from outside of Oro Valley. So I would not be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And to clarify, it would be tier 2. I apologize. That was my typo on the slide. So tier 2 for that one. And then McKenna put in the chat that maybe it stays tier 2 now for First and Tangerine, but it could become a tier 2 in the future as development occurs. So again, just something for the group to think about.
Hey, Malini, I thought maybe I could jump in on that Tangerine and Rancho Sosa Boulevard, and maybe confuse everyone even more. I think really on whether it's tier 1 or 2 depends on what you think the future is for that corner, that intersection. So if all of those vacant areas, there are 3 corners with significant commercial zoning, C1 zoning, that would allow grocery stores, fast food, drive-through, gas station, those types of uses. If you believe that all of that vacant land would go to commercial, that is going to immensely increase the traffic and whatnot. I think it would turn into more of a regional draw. So that's one vision. The other vision is that those 3 corners that are zoned C1 and vacant have been vacant for a couple of decades. And there have been, as folks have mentioned, attempts to turn some of it to mixed use, some of it to residential in order to support the commercial. We've heard from the property owners there's not enough rooftops to fill out the whole areas with C1 commercial. Residential brings less traffic, than full commercial. So if you envision mixed use at this corner or any additional residential at this corner, then I think you're definitely in the should be in the tier 2 camp. But if you think it's going to full pop to C1 on those 3 vacant, it probably would deserve tier 1. So it depends on what your vision for that intersection is.
Thank you, Buyer. Let's go to Bill and then Joe. Oh, and Bill, you're muted, or I don't know if you meant to have your hand up. Let's go to Joe then.
I believe it should remain or should be changed to a tier 1. While Rosa makes some valid points, I drive through that intersection daily. And yes, there are a couple times when you could argue there's traffic, but it really flows pretty well. And I think we should look at it, especially if I'm doing the geography right, the south east corner across from the Walgreens. You know, we need the we need the businesses to generate the tax revenue. And we have 2 corners already that are businesses. The one corner would be north and west really would be a problem to develop, whether it's housing or whatnot. So I think tier 1 is the proper message.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Let's go to Sandy, then McKenna.
Hi, Melanie. I just wanted to suggest that as we listen to what the group decides, that if we could do it on each one individually, rather than, you know, does everyone agree with all these or whatever? Thank you.
So sorry, Sandy, just to clarify, are we talking about, so 1 through 3, the group accepted last time. So if we want to go back and have that conversation, we definitely can. And if you have, and then 4.
Okay, so just number 4 is up for.
Well, we can still, if you guys want to discuss 1 through 3 more, we can. Or if anybody thinks that we should change those, we can. So it's still up for discussion. But 1 through 3 is a result from the last meeting's discussion.
Okay, super, thanks.
Yeah. And so maybe a follow-up question for you, Sandy. For 1 through 3, do you have any concerns about that? And just do keep in mind, please, that number 2 should be tier 2. That's my typo.
Exactly. No, I'm fine with those as long as number 2 is number 2.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, McKenna, Dawn, and then Colleen.
I have a question. So I guess in my mind, I was thinking about these as like we're looking at them just in general as foreseen growth. Like we could see this in the near future affecting things. And Bear, right, your last comment was making me think and ponder. So does adjusting the tiers during this 10-year plan, as I'm reading about like infrastructure expansion, does that mean that like if we upgraded it to a tier 2, even if we don't know if there's added commercial, right? In my mind, sorry, let me try and explain. In my mind, currently, there is not really as much of a draw to that location as I would see a draw towards the marketplace or some of the other tier 1 designations that we currently have. Of things that I see out of towners driving to. I don't necessarily see that as much for site number 4. And
I don't mean to be rude, but it's
Colleen, if you would mute yourself
sorry.
just for a moment.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So if we did though adjust, regardless of whether or not we have that added development made. So in my mind, we would need something exciting to go into that place in order to see the growth that I think a tier 1 normally is referring to. And I don't know if that'll come in the next 10 years or not. Based off of past precedent, I would say maybe not, which is why I was leaning to maintaining it as tier 2. Also to, again, try and get the plan passed and not hear any pushback from the neighbors. But if upping it to a tier 2 means that it could potentially get traffic or infrastructure improvements made to it before those developments go in, is that kind of the way that it would work if we changed it to a tier 2? Does that make sense?
If I may, let you jump in. If it's helpful, regardless whether it's a tier 1 or tier 2, and there was a rezoning or a development proposal, the developer, it would be on his or her nickel to fix the traffic issues, regardless whether it's tier 1, tier 2.
Right.
When a developer is looking to make a zoning change, when they see an area as tier 1, they can use that as an argument of why there should be more intensive development in this area, because there's a high expectation of intense growth. That's what tier 1 indicates. If a developer wants to propose development that's maybe even mixed use, partial residential, low-key commercial, they see tier 2, that aligns well with tier 2.
Okay.
So that's how a developer applying for rezoning would use the tiers to make his or her case.
Okay.
If that's helpful.
So to help clarify for me in my mind, the reason per chance that staff might be recommending this is so that we don't have another Avila project recommendation or proposal that upset the neighbors, so that we would kind of skip that, because a proposal like that might not look at that intersection as a potential development, because they would say, well, it's classified as tier 1 instead of tier 2, so we should look at a different place. Is that what I'm understanding? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand why, like the benefits of each is basically what I'm trying to get.
Right.
And I just want to clarify, so staff isn't recommending
Yes, I'm sorry, that's
reclassification.
not what I
Yeah, so this, the group
Just like,
brought this up last time, so.
So sorry.
No, you're good.
Did not mean to put that on you.
No worries, no worries. So if it's helpful, a developer wanted to go full tilt commercial with higher traffic and more intensity would rather see this a tier 1, and would use that to make their case for that change.
Right.
A developer proposing something that's less intense, like Avia, which has less traffic than commercial, or more Subway sandwich shop, more local serving, smaller restaurant, they would use tier 2 as a justification for that. So that's why I kind of early on said it really depends on what your vision for this intersection is. Regardless whether it's tier 1 and tier 2, the traffic's got issues that have to be fixed by future development. So so it's really kind of to try to help simplify, goes back to, if you envision intensive commercial development, tier 1 is what you want. If you envision something that's just serving the local area, perhaps includes residential mixed use or whatnot, it's lower key than tier 2.
Okay.
So
I think that helps clarify for me. Thank you very much.
All right.
Taking up everyone's time.
No, thanks for the
Good questions.
Good questions.
I want to go to Cheryl next. We haven't heard from you yet on this one, and I think you may have brought it up too in the meeting.
I may need to reconsider if I was the one that thought about changing it to tier 1, because I think that might have been because it would have definitely had to go through the full general plan amendment process, et cetera. But listening to this discussion, more intense usage, if it was a doctor's office or some of the other things that are coming up with healthcare that are very prevalent these days, which seems to be just as was predicted many years ago by the woman from Commercial Industrial Realty. She said everything was going to go to the service industry. And since we see the, Doc in the Boxes popping up everywhere and things like that, it would seem to me that it really wouldn't be as much intense traffic, et cetera, if it was an office building like that. And I can tell you that I live in this area. I don't live, directly on that, so it isn't affecting my view or anything like that. I just have to drive through there all the time at Woodburn and Rancho Vistoso. And the people are adamantly opposed to apartments in those areas on the Rancho Vistoso side, Rancho Vistoso and Tangerine. Initially, when they wanted to do the 3-story apartments there on the northwest corner of or southwest, I don't know which one it is. The side on the opposite side of the street is Safeway. I'm losing my sense of direction. A 3-story apartment building there was just at the gateway of Rancho Vistoso, which is touted to be one of the nice areas in Oro Valley. It was just too much for everybody. So I don't think we're going to have a lot of luck with getting residential in the 2 sides that are on the north side of Tangerine. The other one, maybe it's not. I mean, that's already a very dense area with the Silverhawk developments. Those people might not have as much of an objection to having more residential in there. So I'm kind of in a quandary here because I think I would need it to stay tier 2 as opposed to, but the wording of intense development being associated with the commercial designations that they have now is a little bit unnerving. So I don't know where to go with it other than to share those thoughts.
Yeah, and so thank you, Cheryl, and I appreciate the additional context. I will say the land use designation of the 3 corners is neighborhood commercial office. So the land use designation, definitely, to your point, I think, is more looking at those office uses, doctor uses, type of neighborhood serving uses in the commercial. Now the zoning's a bit different. It's C1, but focusing on the land use designation, if that helps provide some more information. Let's go to Colleen next.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I thought I didn't realize I'd unmuted myself earlier. I apologize. Just quickly, I do want to say that yes, at Tangerine and First, the traffic moves fine for a heavily traveled roadway. However, at Woodburn, trying to get out from the people making U-turns from Safeway, the people going to the school or some of the other places up that way, it is extremely difficult. I think with the I don't drink coffee, Starbucks coming in down further by, I know it seems like I do, further down by the hospital, I understand that there may have been some changes to Tangerine and access to it. What we really objected to was, number one, what we were told it was versus what it really was. And number two, the fact that there was going to be just a whole bunch of access on an already heavily traveled street and not a lot of options that we saw. And again, I just wanted to clarify that. There's been a lot of talk about what we all want. I represent one neighborhood. We want to see Oro Valley be the very best it can be. I also just worry, it's been decades, and I mean decades, since I studied urban planning. But one thing I remember is having empty shops like the marketplace is not always conducive to other developers coming in wanting to develop property. Again, decades ago information, but I'm concerned that those are the places that are regional destinations for a market for other options from a commercial standpoint. Thank you. I'll shut up.
We're gonna, nope, appreciate it, Colleen. And so Bill, Don, and then Kim.
Yeah, I think I said it earlier, so I'm sorry to repeat, but I think we don't reclassify number 4. That corner, I don't believe is, no matter what develops there, I don't think it'll be a regional draw. I just don't. I think with what's already there, we're talking about not regional draw type things, and if we're talking about the possibility of medical building, medical offices and things, it certainly wouldn't be. So I would not be in favor of reclassifying it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, Don, and then Kim.
I would, a couple of things. One of them you might think is trivial, but I've watched it enough to let you know that it is a reasonably serious issue, and that is part of the traffic issue at that intersection. Is the and I know the biker world is going to just get all over me for this. Is the number of bikers that come up there and push the pedestrian button, which completely throws off the timing of the light sequences there, and that's what causes a lot of the traffic back up there. And trust me, I've actually pulled off the street and just watched them come up there, and it's especially true in the morning when a lot of bikers are out doing that, etc. I would also just remind everyone that we very recently had a developer that was very anxious to come in and put some residential on that northwest corner, who was also willing to aid very much in the traffic issues that were there. And basically he got run out of town. So I remind people that you know, sometimes we talk one thing and then something happens elsewhere that causes developers to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So thank you much.
Thank you, Don. Kim, and then we'll get Bob too, because we haven't heard from you yet. Kim?
Yeah, so I'm going back to the fundamentals of why this group was convened together, and it was traffic and housing and development. And I think one of the things that one of the pieces of that puzzle is revenue generation. And I get that there's a concern with congestion and traffic, but I, as a member of this community, would like to see revenue generation in Oro Valley for purposes of affordable housing and keeping people here, understanding the process that traffic concerns and development plans all go through the town process for approval with neighborhood meetings and public meetings, et cetera. But I really feel like Colleen mentioned it just a few minutes ago about these vacant office spaces. Well, that's not doing anything to generate revenue or jobs for the community. And I feel like reclassifying this area, number 4, as tier 1 would invite that opportunity with the trust in the system that developers would have to go through the process, and town would hear from the neighbors, and they would be required to go through, yes, we will modify traffic this way, we will comply with the zoning requirements this way. But I really feel like making it easier for revenue generation for the town would be easier with a tier 1 reclassification. And thank you.
Thank you. And then Bob.
Yes, I agree with the first three statements, adding the 1, 2, and 3. But number 4, I have reservations. I just don't see that intersection as a regional kind of a commercial center. It just feels like a neighborhood corner to me. I could see some commercial development on the south side of Tangerine, the southeast corner on the Kai property. That might make sense for commercial, but I just don't see people coming up there from Oracle to shop at regionally. So that's where I stand. I'm a bicyclist, and sorry, Don, I'm one of those guys trying to get across that intersection in the morning, and I know it fouls up the traffic, but I've almost been hit by cars coming down Tangerine, making the right turn onto First because they're flying and they're not watching the walk sign. And at any rate, it's part of the loop, and a lot of us bicyclists like to go down Tangerine there. So I'll throw my 2 bits in for all the cyclists out there that contend with that intersection, especially. It's a notorious one. So that's all I got.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So from what I heard is from most folks, it may be best to keep it as tier 2. But I do want to thank all of this this was a good discussion. So I want to thank everyone for participating. And I do want to, my but really is do keep in mind, this doesn't take away the C1 zoning by any means. So it can still, right now, they have the rights to develop it all as commercial. So, those of you who see it more developing as a regional commercial center, becoming a tier 2, keeping it as tier 1 doesn't take away the ability for them to develop more commercial in that area, if that helps with some of that. But is that an accurate summary from the group, that we may not all agree with it, but we can all accept it? Again, looking at the word consensus, accept that it's prudent to keep it as a tier 2 for now. Head nod or thumbs up. Or shrug. That works too. I understand. All right. So I will say we're at almost 7:20. We do still have the amendment criteria, the draft goals and policies, and of course I want to check in with this group on the guiding principle. With that said, I don't want to start a conversation about the amendment criteria and then have to cut it real short and pick it back up again. So I would suggest we end the meeting now, early, and reconvene next Thursday, May 8th, from 5:30 to 7:30 online. And we'll pick it up there. We'll go through the amendment criteria, the draft goals, policies, and actions, and the guiding principle. Those were emailed out to you, but I will send a reminder with an email with it too. But if everybody's good with that, I think I saw a lot of head nods. Nobody's complaining about getting 10 minutes back of their evening. So want to thank you all again for a great conversation. You did get a lot done tonight.
Thanks, gang.
Received a lot of good information for the map. So thank you all.
Thank you, Malini.
Thank you, Malini and team.